The China-India standoff in the Doklam area has shown no sign of abating over the past few weeks, and now a Chinese scholar from the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences has written in Global Times that China is actually planning a small-scale military operation to expel Indian troops within 2 weeks. And an Indian-born British economist has also predicted it is very likely that there will be a state of full-scale war between China and India on several fronts, not just on Doklam. But is a war really likely to break out? Joining me today from Beijing is Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and from New Delhi we have Professor Madhav Nalapad, UNESCO Peace Chair at Manipal University. Let me start with you, Mr. Rong. It seems that Indians has withdrawn some of its troops from Doklam area and has left around 50 personnel and some equipment over there. So does it mean that India is planning to pull out of the Doklam area?
Well, yes, I think it all depends on the real situation on the ground. It is true, I've read some reports that on the ground, the Indian side has reduced troops on the ground. But still, I also read that on the Indian side of the boundary line, there are border deployment that has been strengthened. So it all depends on what is happening on the ground. And from the Chinese perspective, I think as long as there's one single soldier left around in the Chinese side of the boundary, the situation will not resolved. So it all depends on how the Indian side, whether it is Indian, would take the right, correct decision to defuse this issue.
Mr. Nalapad, what do you make of the Indian strategy? Is it planning to pull out of China's controlled areas, or is it to stay in Doklam with minimum presence for a long time?
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you the Indian government strategy. I have no idea what the government is going to decide.
But what
I
is in
would
the
like
best
to point out
interest
that
of
that
India,
area
in your
is
opinion?
very close to, in my opinion, the best interest of India and the best interest of China, both countries, is to ensure that the situation remains peaceful on the border and it not escalate into a conflict. Because as has been correctly said, we can start a conflict in a particular sector, but where it will spread, we do not know. We can start a conflict in the field of defense, but that is likely to go into the field of economics, business, and so many other fields. So before lighting that kind of a fire, I'm sure that the leaders of both India and China will think very, very deeply. And I, for one, have always have confidence in the leadership of China and that of India, that they are not going to light a fire over which subsequently they may not have control.
But the Chinese side has been very clear. If there is one single soldier staying in the Doklam area, China cannot promise there wouldn't be military conflicts. Mr. Nalapad.
Well, look, for us, the whole of Jammu and Kashmir belongs to us. And we have a lot of Chinese people there. You have a Chinese road being built there. And you have on the eastern, northeastern corner of India, you have an area which we believe is our territory.
So you bring up a new
frankly,
dispute between
China has
and
taken
India.
over and has built it. No, it's not a new dispute. It's been there. My point is very simple. India has not allowed these activities to lead to war, because we know that the consequences of the two biggest powers in Asia going to war will be much more than India and China. It will make a difference to Asia. It will make a difference to our relationship with the United States, your relationship and my relationship. Both of us will be weaker. It will make a big difference in trade. I believe Chinese companies have a $300 billion market in India. Korean companies, Japanese companies, American companies, European companies, they'd be delighted if there is a war, because that means the Chinese
companies. But since you
companies
mentioned
will be
that,
excluded from
I
the
was
Indian
told
market.
that the
I do not
BJP party
believe
in India has already raised the idea of boycotting Chinese goods because of the dispute now in Doklam. it seems that the Indians are in no mood of economic
is,
cooperation if the dispute is something hanging over them.
Well, that is absolutely not correct. The BJP government has not passed any such policy. Individuals in the BJP may have said that, or individuals whom some people think are in the BJP may have written something. Now we find in China, whether on the internet or in India, people write all kinds of things. Like one scholar has talked about war in 2 weeks. Some other scholar in London has talked about a full-scale war. I don't believe any of these things. On the Indian side, India has been very, very careful not to make any inflammatory comment. And may I remind you, our Prime Minister opened India to Chinese investment, opened India to Chinese tourism, and he has given no indication of any kind of a reversal of that policy.
And Mr. Rong,
that is because of our confidence that the leadership of China will ensure that there is peace.
And Mr. Rong, Mr. Nalapa said that he wouldn't know the authorities' calculations, but some analysts say that New Delhi is now betting on Beijing's preoccupation with preparations for the BRICS summit in Xiamen, which of course we expect Indian Prime Minister Modi to come, and also the upcoming 19 CPC's Party Congress, so that the Chinese will have their hands tied. There wouldn't be war or conflicts happening because of the dispute. What is your thinking?
Well, before I answer your question, let me just come back a little bit about the issue raised by my friend, Professor Nalapad, about Kashmir. I think the issue of Kashmir is totally different from what is happening in Donglang. Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute, and the Chinese position has always made very clear, remain unchanged. So I don't think it's a good idea to compare the Kashmir issue with the incident of Donglang, where it is very clear internationally, I mean legally, that the Indian side is illegally sending its border troops across and delimited the boundary areas between China and India. Coming back to the question of the presumption that because of the BRICS summit meeting and because of the China's domestic agenda in later part of the year, that could possibly mean that China would sacrifice its core interest for territorial integrity and sovereign right. I think it is totally wrong and a miscalculation. And of course, a successful summit of BRICS will definitely, I think, serve the best interest of all the members of BRICS, including India. And I hope that, and I believe it is also the understanding of the Indian side that we will work together to make sure this summit successful. But for that, I think the Indian side should make the right decision and find a way, find a way right now without any hesitation, so to diffuse this, the issue. And that is, for that, I think, as my government repeatedly said, that India has to withdraw unconditionally its border troops that has been illegally trespassing China's territory.
And also, Mr. Nalapad, there is a long-term concern from China. From the Chinese perspective, if a clear boundary line bound by a legal document, in Chinese opinion, are tampered with, how can we trust India if Indian troops won't go across the border anytime in the future?
Well, I'd like to point out that according to our understanding, that particular area belongs to Bhutan, which is an old friend of India, and it doesn't belong to China at all. That is our understanding of that particular territory. So it's not, and so far as our understanding of Kashmir is concerned, it is 100% a part of India, and we don't recognize this so-called international dispute. And today in the United Nations, everybody yawns when the mention of Kashmir is taken up by the Pakistan side. Nobody is interested in this any longer. So we have a different perception from the Chinese side. My point is, on the South China Sea, for example,
you even
American
don't
ships
think
have
that
been
the
coming.
Chinese has
China
full
doesn't go to
control
war.
over Donglang area up until now. even if Putin brought that up?
Well, I'd simply like to say that full control does not imply building a wall or building a road that comes right to our sensitive area. If our Chinese friends can, for example, they don't need that the road. That's a road to nowhere. So even if the Chinese side stops building that road, frankly, then the entire cause of action is over. Our problem is with the road. It's with nothing else.
Mr. Rong, I want you to
and
respond to Nalapal's concern
nowhere.
about building the road. Is it the road leading to nowhere, or there is some practical use for China to do it?
China made it very clear. Donglang is an indisputable part of China's territory. Building a road, either a road, a house, or whatever, this is purely legitimate, legal, and within the right of China. And India does not have any right to intervene, let alone military, on whatever excuse it. I want to come back to my friend's argument again on the Kashmir issues. I think it's known to everybody that UN has a resolution on the Kashmir issue, and to raise to hold a plebiscite. The fact that India does not want or ignore that resolution is a different issue. But we cannot deny the fact this is an international recognized dispute, which is totally different from the issue we're talking about. Let alone South China Sea. I'm very shocked to learn that my good friend raised these issues. They are just confusing. You are making the issue more complicated, my friend.
I want to talk about another topic. We're running out of time. The Indian media recently tends to blow some hot and cold on China, sometimes in a way that China finds difficult to follow. I know that at the end of July, you yourself, Mr. Nalapal, met with Wu Dunyi, the newly elected Kuomintang Nationalist Party chairman in Taiwan, the opposition party now. What is your takeaway from this meeting, and what do you think the Indian media and the political establishment's thinking about one China policy? Is there any change of tone?
Well, there's no change of tone, and may I point out that whenever I go to Taipei, I meet the leaders of the DPP and the KMT, and this is not the first time I've met the incoming chairman, Mr. Wu. Mr. Ma Ying-jeou is a very old friend of mine. I have many friends in the KMT. I have many friends in the DPP, and frankly, I'm a private citizen. I have nothing to do with the government of India in any form whatsoever. But if a mountain is made of speculation, is made out of a small meeting, I can't help it. In the Indian side, I don't think anybody has reported this meeting because it's an inconsequential meeting between two old friends.
But there was an Indian magazine, Indian Today, recently published a front cover showing the map of China deliberately omitting Tibet and Taiwan. So here in China, there's strong response to this kind of description about China.
Well, I was told by somebody in the magazine that this was not really omitting Tibet, but it was the shape of a chicken, and it was a kind of a cartoon map of different countries. So it is not really a serious map. So again, that magazine is, people have made it very clear to me, there was no question of omitting Tibet. So far as Tibet is concerned, India has several times emphasized that Tibet is a part of China. This has been emphasized over and over and over again. And India has made it very clear it will not tolerate any splittist activities by any Tibetan group in India. And I think India has kept to that agreement very, very carefully.
Right.
So quite frankly, I think we are really making mountains out of molehills, and we are trying to create a situation in which these small issues can lead to a very large war. A war would be a catastrophe for India and China. These are basically small issues, and if we look at it from a sense of perspective, we will understand a great country like China, a great country like India, with 5,000 years of peace behind us, we will not allow the small issue to launch into a war.
All right, we'll end on that note. Thank you very much, Mr. Nalapal, and also Mr. Rong Ying, for your analysis on this. You've been watching The Point on CGTN. We'll be right back.